To us, magic sounds like this extraordinary thing, pulling a rabbit out of the hat, coming out of nowhere. But it's here, it's real, and the more that we are open to the unseen, to the energies of this world, to abundance and manifesting, to calling in and growing, the more we'll be able to call magic into our lives. Join me as I share stories, wisdom, and curiosity around connecting with your higher frequency, tapping into the synchronicities of the universe, and opening up to the unseen possibilities that this world has to offer. I am your host, Dayna Faye, and this is the Ordinary Magic Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ordinary Magic Podcast. I am so excited today that I have on my good friend, Nicole Doyle. We met each other in our HDT training, which is the Human Design Teacher Training by Sam and Nadia of Moonrise. Shout out to them. When I joined that training, my sole intention, obviously I wanted to learn about human design, but I just wanted to make more friends in this community. And that's exactly what happened. Nicole and our friend Christine and I were in this little cohort group together, and we telegrammed for like a year straight, not just about all the nerdy things about human design, but like astrology. We shared meditations, German New Science, anything that was like out there and interesting. We were chatting about it, which was super fun. So I'm so excited to have you on today, Nicole.
Oh, thanks, Dayna. I'm so excited too. It was like fate that we got into that little cohort together and we studied so much. And shout out to Christine if you're listening. We love you. And Sam and Nadia, just the best teachers and the best time. And we learned so much together, like living life together through that time. So I'm so excited.
Yeah, you're so right. We really took what we were learning and would chat about life and actually apply it. You know, like how does it show up for you as a projector? How does it show up for me as an MG? It was cool.
It really was. I'm thinking of the one time where I was draining my pool and I was laughing, like in real life, I was like, ladies, like I'm just winging it. And my husband is like, not okay with winging it. His design is like not okay with winging it. And I was just like, we'll figure it out. If it's not the first, second, or third time, the fourth time will be it. And that's my line 3 profile, like coming out to play.
Yes, I remember that too. And you have is it a 1 in your other?
Yeah, I'm a 1-3.
So you have a really good balance of like researching and then being like, let's just try it. Let's give it a whirl.
Exactly. Just when you think you've learned enough, like that other part of me is like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to test the waters so that I can teach other people how to do it.
Yeah. So I'm super curious, just right before I introduce you officially to the audience, Nicole is a projector, but you do a lot. And human design says projectors, are supposed to rest more. They're supposed to work like 3 hours a day. That's kind of that old language. What do you have to say about that?
That's a great question. And I have felt like when I learned about human design, I was like, oh, I'm definitely a manifesting generator because like I do everything. And then I was a projector and I was like, well, that's cool. But I was like, am I sure? I double checked my birth info, everything. I think I do have 2 energy centers defined. So I'm considered an energy projector. And I feel like that leans into it. But also what I'm doing, I feel so good about. So I'm also really efficient, which is a projector trademark. And you can tell when things take me a lot longer that maybe it is out of alignment. When it really always takes that long, I'm like, maybe I could be more efficient at this if it was truly for me. And I also keep a sacral being nearby for the energy boost.
Yes, that is a good way to do that. Yeah, that's so cool. And Nicole is mega efficient and she's a beautiful, wonderful gardener. So if you follow her on Instagram, you can, especially now that it's spring, I'm sure you will be having tons of content as you start planting. Not only you do flowers and food and everything, right?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. And I have a bunch of shrubs and flowering bushes and things like that. So it's all garden all the time around here, but spring is truly special and it's quick and fleeting. So follow along for all the best spring blooms.
Yes, that ties into so much we're going to talk about all the different seasons that we personally go through in our life and how you help your coaching clients with that. So to formally introduce Nicole, she is a life and business coach who firmly believes that our souls didn't come here to suffer, we're meant to bloom. She helps women identify what they really want, own it, and take aligned action. After a sudden loss of her mother in her early 20s and then moving through her own burnout, she realized life was meant for living now, not one day when. She weaves concepts of nature and astrology with developmental psychology focused on the whole human experience with an emphasis on protective resistance. Nicole helps her clients create safe and flexible ways to have new experiences to make lasting changes. So, Nicole, give us a little background story about you and how you got into all the things you're interested in, your gardening, astrology, the season changes, becoming a coach. What's your background? How'd you get into it?
Yeah, it can be summed up into a few like major moments in my life where I grew up with a single mom. We were super close. And when she passed away suddenly in 2012, then I was left to just kind of figure out life myself. And it was us. We were always together. And so I did what I knew best, which was, okay, well, I'm going to be a corporate woman. Like, this is what I do. And I went into the workforce and I was super successful. I was like running a marathon, but at a sprint's pace in corporate land. And I was just doing what I thought made sense, like make more money, do these things. And my mom was an avid gardener, but I didn't really think that I would become so much of a gardener because of really the memory. It kind of was painful. I didn't spend a lot of time with her in her garden. It was just something that existed in our life, and I didn't really know that I could have that connection with it. And so as I was in corporate for a while, I would like, I need something else to do, but I was always so busy. And so I wanted to experience gardening and have the hummingbirds come and all of this. In my time after she passed, like I started gardening, I got better at it, and I really dove into it like in 2018, 2019. And it became such a release for me and such a beautiful way for me to slow down. Something I was just so unfamiliar with was slowing down and patience. And I used to say, the only place I have patience is in my garden. And it became such a lesson for me in so many ways, and experiencing such beauty and slowing down to actually experience it. But, it takes time for those things to actually land in other areas of your life. And so the garden has been a constant for me for so many years, for like almost 7 years now, of having that constant garden presence. But becoming a coach like was a natural evolution for me. People were always coming to me asking me like, what do you think? What do you experience in this way? How can I handle this or do that? And I was like, I love this. Like, I love when people ask me these questions. It makes me feel really excited to like help them, but like guide, not fix. That's one of the biggest things that I believe is important. But it was my own personal coaching journey that I had experienced with a coach in 2017 that really made me think, that's great. But I didn't think I could do it until around 2019, 2020. So that's like a little like short intro of that. But in 2019, burnout really hit me hard. It really hit me hard. And it was like, I don't know, some spiritual people would call it a dark night of the soul, and I totally agree with that. It was rough. It was like everything came crashing down in my reality, but nothing bad happened. Does that make sense? Like, I was just like, this cannot go on this way. I can't live like this anymore. And, it was in that moment that I knew that like things had to change, and I was the one who could change them. Like, I couldn't rely on anyone else to change the way that I was showing up at work, the way that I was showing up for other people. Like, it had to be me. And thank God I had a garden to be my companion in that time.
That's amazing. So what small changes did you start making as soon as you realized, okay, I'm the one who has to make a change to fix this burnout?
Wow. I sat on this floor in my office and I cried. I cried my eyes out. I was like ready to go to New York for work. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't, be under this much pressure. I had to get on the train the next day and go to New York for work. So I did. But every little change was just like realizing that every day I'm going to have to figure out what is going to change. And it required me to show up differently. So I started seeing, okay, like what is one small thing I can experiment with that will give me a little bit more peace of my time? Maybe it's saying no to one thing per week, maybe one thing per week. And then from there, picking like what feels like a wave that's not going to knock you down. It feels a little bit like risky, but it's not going to take you down. It's not like a 70-foot wave that's going to knock you down, to see where in my life I could start making little shifts. And that made a big difference because it was not all at once. Because if it was, then we wouldn't even be here talking today. I probably would have never made it to be a coach. I would have been like somewhere in corporate land, just like super stressed.
Yes. Whenever I have a question for you, you're like on it right away. Like I always know you're like such a guide, and you definitely have that projector magic in that way, like, which is really cool. So when you found out you were a projector, was waiting for the invitation pretty natural for you then?
No. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
As young as I can remember, I was inserting myself into things I should not have been inserting myself into. Knowing things and just knowing how they should be done and making people so uncomfortable, because you can imagine this little child who just like could see so much differently than others, and then like telling adults and other people. Not only was I intimidating, but I was like freaking them out. You know what I mean? So it was a journey. It was a journey to like learn that what I was going to tell you would land so much better if I just simply waited for someone to ask.
So what would you do now that we're the next generation and parents these days are learning about human design? What if you had a little Nicole as your child? How would you coach her as a projector? Like, you can't just be like, sit tight, Nicole, and wait till you're an adult and people will take you seriously. Like, what would you do?
Yeah, well, as a projector who grew up with a manifestor mom who didn't we didn't know. And then my grandmom, who also raised me, was also a projector. So there was love, but my mom sometimes would just kind of like say things like, that's not cute. Don't do that. You can't say those things. But I felt really safe to tell my mom stuff. Like, she would just say, like, be careful when you're out with a bunch of other people. Like, you don't say things that may like not be well received.
So she intuitively recognized that you had this wisdom within you.
She did, but here's the thing. My mom was also an initiating manifestor. So like, she would just blow people's mind all the time. Like with her, like, well, this is what we're going to do now. And it was always like, huh. So I saw that as like powerful and important. And that's like how you work in the world. And so for me as a projector, I was like, oh, like, I remember I didn't like this person my one aunt was dating. And I was like, nope, I don't like him. There's something wrong with this person. My mom was like, what do you mean? I was just like, something's not right with him. And I was like 6. And she's like, you never even spent any time with him. Like, how do you know something's not right? And I was like, I don't know, just something's not right. He had a whole other family. He had a secret family. So my mom would be like, God, you're right. Like, she knew. So if I'm parenting the next generation, I think I just want to make a safe place for my children to know that, like, this is your haven. This is your sanctuary. Like, this is where ideas are free to be shared. This is where things that you're not sure about are safe to have, because the world isn't always ready for that stuff. I might not tell them that, but I might make it so that it feels so safe here that, like, this is your garden, you know, and we do whatever we want in our garden. And then also like help them find the good and the beauty in life so much that they feel like they can experience all of that. Because I feel like that's not emphasized a lot in parenting when you get to a certain age. Maybe as like under 7, you're like, this is great, this is fun. But then when they get older, it's like, life is important. And I want to keep that like childlike wonder for them. I somehow managed it.
Yeah, keep that magic alive. And instead of asking them where they want to go to college at 13 years old, just keep the magic alive. Because
exactly,
your story of when you were 6 years old and just sensing that is an example of you being able to read energy, being a bit psychic, being, you know, whatever that magic was inside you. So many kids have that, especially when they're young, because they're uninfluenced at that time. So it's so important for us to recognize small children and what they're saying and validate that maybe some of what they're saying can be very real. Yeah.
Exactly.
So when you were telling that story, that was so magical. I'm wondering, how has your journey been with connecting back with your senses that are beyond the 5 senses? When did you start tapping it? Was it when you started gardening? Was it before it? When did you start realizing like, oh, I'm an energy reader too. I have these capabilities?
Yeah, I think that my intuition really taps into people and how they feel. And I guess some people call that like an empath, but like in human design specifically, I'm a non-emotional being. And so my environment is most of the time it's 65 and sunny and it's great. And I'm always like, I'm not on that emotional wave. Like, I'm just like, woo, you know, living. And so I've now started to realize that I was taking on so much of other people's energy in all of my life that like my emotional barometer is steady. So I started connecting more to the fact that I could read energy and there was something else happening for me intuitively. Actually at nighttime, I would have night terrors. And so that's not like a happy story of like, oh my gosh, I had night terrors and like the stress was just so much for me. But in the past 2 years, I've really become more acquainted with that nighttime energy that have made it less scary for me because I didn't know what was actually happening. I just thought like, oh my gosh, this is happening. And there's nothing bad happening to me in my sleep. And I've actually been told that like my guides and spirit team are like, so desperate to get to me that they will
Aw.
come to me in the night. They're like, you're not relaxed enough during the day that we have to come to you at night. It's the only time you chill out. And I was like, oh. So then I started making more room for myself to be more zen, during the day, whether it's through meditation or just opening myself up to experience signs and experience synchronicities, and especially in the garden and different things, like allow my intuition to tell me what will be okay. Especially with gardening, I'm like, I don't know, is that going to work out? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust. And like, I feel like the flower is going to be fine, and it will be fine. And that's like a really simple example, but like making more time for me to feel that intuitive nudge during the day has really quieted the nighttime down a lot.
That's amazing. Do you get messages in your dreams, or do you dream about like people in your life?
No, it's usually far more like archetypal than that. Like I feel like it's I'm busy in my sleep. Like I'm doing stuff in my sleep that I have no idea. Like it does not make sense, but I wake up rested. Like it's not an issue of rest, but I'm like, that was busy. Like I was really busy last night.
I totally resonate with you. That was really happening to me the week leading up to the solar eclipse we just had on April 8th.
Yeah.
This is 2024 if you're listening later. The 4 days leading up to that, I was like, oh my God, I am so busy at night, but I'm rested. But I was like waking up every 2 hours and then falling asleep again and dreaming a whole different storyline, working on something else. And then I'd wake up again and I'm like, dang. So you're deeply connected to your plants, and that's such a great place to practice intuition. Anyone with nature or your pets, do you feel really the life of plants when you're gardening?
Yeah, I really do. There's so much beauty. It brings me a lot of emotion. Like it gives me so much feeling where I'm like, oh, it's just so beautiful. And when you really study the sepals and the petals and the pollination aspects of flowers, and you just like can look into, it's like a world within a world. These flowers are in our world, but they are their own world in themselves. And like something like that looks like a little rock. I'm thinking of like an anemone corm, right? Will turn into this beautiful, beautiful flower and produce multiple blooms over and over again, all spring, as long as the conditions are right. And it's just magical. Or things like a tulip, right? Like I love to see the cyclical nature of plants because I think it mimics our life in so many ways. And I find that a lot of people don't realize that we are just as special as these plants, as these seeds. And while we have even more capabilities, we have no idea what that plant is doing. When I cut my flowers to bring in the house, like I'll say to them, like, thank you so much, like for your beauty. And then like when it's time to compost them, I'm like, thank you for your service. So, I feel like it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship we can have with these plants.
That's so inspiring and motivating for somebody listening who is like, okay, you've convinced me. I want to try something this spring. What is the easiest plant to start your green thumb with?
So that's a great question. So a plant that I plant every summer when it gets warm enough, there's no frost, the same time you would plant a tomato, you can get a pack of zinnia seeds, no matter where you are probably. And those are my favorite thing to grow. My mom grew them. We had this whole thing where she planted like 3 or 4 packs in like the spot that you only needed like half a pack. And then like we gave so many flowers away to the neighborhood, and it was just such a magical experience. And so zinnias are super easy to grow, or even like a sunflower if you have the space, but you don't need a ton of space to grow a sunflower. But zinnias would be my hands down favorite. Seed to dirt. And in 60 days, 75 days, you'll have a flower. And every flower you cut, it'll make more flowers. So it's really special.
Oh, that's so special.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And now you've really brought the seasons into your coaching practice even. So the seasons of self, tell us about that.
Yeah, so Seasons of Self has been in the back of my mind for so long. And I was actually thinking about this today. I was like, how people always tell that story where they're like, this has been in the making for a long time. And I'm always like, where's my thing? Where's my thing that's been in the making? I don't know. Do I have a thing that's been in the making? And then when it actually comes into your reality, you're like, oh yeah, I have had this in the making for a long time. So Seasons of Self came about when I was home, like many of us were, suddenly in March 2020. Now, mind you, this was right after my Dark Night of the Soul, maybe like 5 months before, and I was still navigating how I was making these changes. Found myself home going like, I'm going to make a bigger garden this year, and this is going to be great. And I looked up at the trees and I was like, it's March. Like, why are there no leaves out yet? Because I was still disconnected from the rhythms of the earth. And I was wondering, like, why do we not have leaves all this to say, I started to say, okay, I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to notice this season. When do those flowers bloom? When do those trees get leaves? When does all this happen in nature? When do the robins come back? When do these things happen? And it took time for me to start orienting myself to the seasons. And then I realized, okay, nature has seasons. We have seasons. Most people probably listening may identify as a woman, and you probably have a menstrual cycle. We have seasons of our menstrual cycle. Each month we go through a whole phase, or, every so many days. There's a rhythm to this. So what other rhythms are there? So we know the rhythms throughout the year. Seasons, between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, and then the summer solstice to the fall equinox to the winter solstice, and then back again to the spring equinox. These periods of equal, and then these periods of extra dark and extra light. I thought to myself, how do we have those same seasons within us? But what if they don't match up? And so a coach had mentioned that we could have astrological seasons. And then I went into a deep dive for 2 years. 2 years I've been figuring this out, tinkering with it. And I've been studying birth charts. I probably looked at over 100 birth charts now in the seasonal context, and seeing, everyone would think that this is a straightforward calculation, but I think it's unique for each person. Now, where your spring, summer falls in your chart depends on a lot of different factors in your chart. And so I use astrology to kind of overlay the two and see what makes sense based on our personal energetic flow throughout the year. So that's Seasons of Self in a nutshell, but we can keep talking about yours. I did your personal chart because I wanted to see what your energy flow feels like throughout the year and test this theory with you and see how it works, because this has become a central part of the work I do. And I want to continue to see what other people feel about it, because we always test everything against our own authority, right? We can't say this is the only way it can be done. That's just so dogmatic, and we don't operate that way. But it really does help us inform our own energetic flow throughout the year.
Well, this is so cool and such a treat, Nicole. I had no idea we're going to dive deep into mine today, but let's do it.
Yeah. So I have yours over here, and I have the standard natal chart, and I'm studying it for a lot of different things. And so what I discovered was that, Dayna, your spring starts at Sagittarius season, which is in late November. And that happens to be right before the winter solstice. And so what I see for you is that your beginning seasons are starting off in a mutable energy. So mutable energy is like technically at the tail end. So we have 3 types of energy throughout the year that repeat. It's cardinal, which is the first energy right out of the gate, really strong. And it comes out and it's like, let's go, let's get it going. Just like amazing energy. Then we have fixed energy, which I have a lot of fixed energy in my chart. It's kind of like blinders on, keep it moving, don't stray the course. Like we're in the middle of the season, right? Like we're in the thick of it. And then mutable energy is that ending energy, like it's the end of a season. And I think of mutable as very much like fish weaving through water, flexible, adaptable. You think of climates between seasons, how they're kind of in that swing, it's giving you a taste of the next, but it's adaptable to what's to come. So your seasons begin on a mutable note. Now, traditional seasons begin on a cardinal note. So that's something interesting to consider. You might be like, okay, I'm in a new season now, I'm flexing, but like it might feel better when you're entering the new season versus leaving the last season. The reason being, you ended your personal winter in November, Scorpio season, and that's fixed energy. So spring for you really takes you through Aquarius season. And then you enter this summer season in Pisces. Now, I think of spring as like sowing the seeds, right? I consider it in like a sowing season. We're doing a lot of work. We're planting a lot of seeds. And then we move into summer, where it is tending season. When does your garden get the craziest? In the summer. You have a lot of tending to do. You have a lot of watering, doing all of these things. And I joke that summer is like, you better work. That is like a season of work and getting things done and all of this. It could be good work, or it could be like, this is some challenging time. Like I am busy, but we're getting that extra energy boost usually because our summer season's full of planets that are being activated by the sun at that time. So not always, but most of the time what I find is that people with concentrated energy in their chart, which you have some concentrations, not like it's not smacked together like some I've seen where I'm like, oh my gosh, you must have a really busy, like active month or so. But if your energy's spread out in that spring and summer where most of your personal planets are. So you get that extra boost of energy from the sun in those areas where those planets are conjunct. And I feel like that for you is what makes that happen. I mean, and you're a Leo rising. And so your Leo rising is ruled by the sun. And for you, the sun's in Gemini. And so that begins your personal fall. And it doesn't always for everyone, but where it falls for you, I feel like it really makes sense that you would then be like coming to a season like of ending of that hard work. And you're now flowing into a time of harvest, inner harvest, outer harvest. But let's say harvest season does not always mean relax and do nothing. Because you think about like our ancestors, harvest season was like, we got to get the food, we got to stock up for the winter before you end up getting to your winter season, which I consider an inner vision season where you're visioning what's for the future. And that for you starts in Virgo season right before the fall equinox. So you've got a whole entree before you get into that fall equinox period.
Okay, this is so fascinating. I really feel like, so I'm looking at my chart right now as I'm talking to you. My spring season ending with Aquarius. I mean, I think I naturally do some self-inquiry around the New Year time, which is my spring season. And then Aquarius season, I really love that energy. It goes great. And then I feel like there is a shift every year when Pisces rolls around, and I have a really hard, obviously emotional time during Pisces because that is the energy, and it's a little like elusive and illusionary. And so it's kind of like, yes, I'm trying to start my summer work, but I'm also feeling all these emotions that I kind of need to attend to first. And then Taurus and Gemini for me is just like, I just love that time of year. And Aries, Taurus, Gemini is such a great time of year. So when do I move to fall?
Fall, I believe for you begins in Gemini season. And so
Okay.
I love how you describe this because remember what I said about the mutable energy? You start your season on that mutable energy, which is Pisces energy is very mutable. And so you're struggling to go from fixed Aquarius into mutable Pisces, and you're having a season change at the same time. You're like, I was good. I was on the path.
Yes.
And now Pisces season comes. So some people's energy, like this is truly all custom for each person. Your birth chart's unique. Everyone, even identical twins have different birth charts because of that 1 to 2 minute difference of them being born. But what we find is like, okay, when you've got that flow of energy different than the traditional seasons, you will notice. And what I love about, you said Aries, Taurus, and Gemini season are great. Like think about in traditional world, like 4th of July through like September. That's what your experience, like that's good weather. It's fun. It's typically social. That's your Aries through Gemini season. That's that cool time of the year where it's like, sun shining, everything's good. I mean, like that's kind of your personal summer. So I love that you can feel that even just like from inquiring right now. And you may find if you like say track this for a year, like just the actual flow of energy, like where do you actually feel the shifts happening? It might change. It might be like a month or so off or a season off. And then you can always just note that on your own wheel of like, oh, you know what? Actually, I thought my summer started here, but I think it starts here. And this is obviously very specific to the flow of energy throughout the entire year. But as we talked about before, you can have longer seasons of life, right? Where things are different. Like when you had Mia, I'm sure you were in a personal season for a while, as you were going through, conception and, creating Mia, and then birth, it's like a whole other season, and then actually having an infant.
Yeah.
It's like, feels like the work of a summer while being inward of vision,
It is. It's wild. That was like what felt like a 4-year season for sure, because I feel like 2 years postpartum was still part of that season for sure. So why is it helpful for us to know our seasons and start to pay attention to this?
Yeah, so I find that understanding our seasons is so critical to understanding our energy flow throughout the year. And then it helps us for planning purposes, right? For things we want to do or things we'd like to do. But also it really helps because life is flexible and we don't always have full control over everything. So I think about people who have seasonal jobs like teachers, right? Or maybe farmers even, florists, or people who have things like that are super active in certain times of year. If you know as a teacher, you're about to enter your personal winter in September, in the beginning of a school year, you definitely have to adapt how you have your needs met in that season so that you don't end up burning out. Or for me personally, my seasons are flipped. So my summer is in winter and my spring is in fall, so like traditional earth fall.
Yeah.
And so I know that I will likely overload myself as we get into Taurus season and then feel bad because this is a great gardening season. This is a super exciting time, but like I'm starting to wind down. I'm starting to wind down personally. And so then I start to feel really guilty. I should be doing this. I should want to do that. Come summer, both Mark and I, my husband, we have the same seasons because our birthdays are 8 days apart and it actually works out that way. But we have all these lofty plans for summer. And then like, we're like, peace out. We're just going to be in the pool. Like we do not want to do a lot. And it helps us really respect what we need in each of those times. So it really, having your needs met is probably more important than anything seasonal, I can tell you, because it's just the basis of everything. But, you know, this really helps people look into that more from a concept that helps them understand it.
Yeah, and I imagine really looking into your winter season because I think we're so conditioned to think we should have the same work output or, you know, mental output all year round. And this is just another reminder that we do go through seasons and we should rest or slow down or go inward during our winter season.
Yeah, if that feels aligned to go inward at that time, that's perfect. And then also too, I like to take a seasons on the macro view. This is a macro view, your whole year around the natal wheel, right? But if we take it on a micro view, like thinking of your real estate clients, you know, on a project basis, you know, moving and finding a new home is not it's not a quick project, but you think of starting in winter, right? You start with the vision. Oh, you know what? I think we'd like a house with a bigger yard. We'd like a house that's closer to my parents. So you've now begun the vision. You have the vision. You're like, oh, you know, it would be great. A house with like a red door and then a bigger yard. And it's like 5 to 10 minutes from my parents. So it's in a different town. So you start to say, okay, that's it. So then you're like, okay, the vision is, that's the vision. I want this house. Now I am now entering spring season. Now we're going to start to sow the seeds. We're sowing the seeds. Okay, we're going to call Dayna. We're going to say, Dayna, we're looking for a house in this area. Please help us. And then even your spring begins because you've got their vision downloaded. Now you're checking the market. You're seeing what's available in the inventory. You see what's coming up and you're all kind of searching, right? Then you go into tending summer season. You found the house. You're writing the offer. You're going through the inspection. They're going through financing, escrow, all of these beautiful pieces of the real estate cycle. And it's work. There's a lot of work that goes into this part. Even looking for the home can be a lot of work, but you're still sowing the seeds and then tending the garden at the same time. So it's kind of flexible in real estate. Then you imagine you're at the signing table, you know, everything's done. You're celebrating, so exciting. You're handing the keys over. You're in your harvest season. You're now reaping what you've sown. You started with that vision. You end up harvesting, which is now having your new home. And you enter that new part of your life. And maybe then at that project basis, you go back to the vision. You're like, now this is our home. Where are we putting the sofa? You know, so you can see how it works like on a project basis too, let alone the whole year. And so that's why you might have a longer season of life or a season of self that's like just extended beyond what it is in your life. But you might realize, oh, my energy's dipping. I need to conserve. I need to prioritize what's really important to me here. And it can be used in so many ways. That's why I help my clients do that with projects or just even understanding their own life.
That is such a great example. So I have a question for you to help me with one more example. I do a real estate YouTube channel to help people who aren't living in Madison, Wisconsin yet get to know Madison, Wisconsin. And I started it last year and I was doing it weekly where it was like film the video on Monday, edit it on Wednesday, publish it on Friday. And I burned out so quickly. So it's been 6 months since I've posted a video, but just last week I had 2 separate clients reach out to me and they're like, we love your YouTube. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm like, okay, I want to do YouTube again. So I could take a look at the seasons that you made me and maybe actually plan ahead and maybe plan the content in my spring season, do all like the filming and editing in summer, and then like schedule it out and publish it over fall and winter, something like that. Is that how you would recommend it?
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking, I was like, is there any better time than spring, like actual current earth spring in Madison, Wisconsin? Like you are in your inner summer, you're ready to go. Like you're ready to work. This is a season for you between now and I would say the end of Gemini season. So from now until the summer solstice where you can crank that stuff out and feel energy to do so. And I would also recommend, obviously, we can't always just work in seasons or quarters, right? Like that just isn't viable for everyone's life and for everyone's lifestyle. For those who can, or for those who are like, it's Mercury retrograde, I'm not going to do anything, like, good for you. You stick with that. But like, I haven't figured out that secret yet. And so I would recommend you even think about what are like 1 to 2 video ideas that you can complete in your inner winter, you know? And so maybe you're doing like 5 to 7 videos in your summer, and you do a few others here and there, but it's not as taxing on you because you already have visioned what they're going to be. And it's just a matter of, you know, capturing fall color or showing some like fall festivals in actual earth fall during your inner winter season. So you're not like, oh my gosh, I have to film all these videos. Like it balances
like just
it
getting
out.
B-roll during, you know, while I'm enjoying the nature or something. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I love it. And then you can harvest, aka reap what you sow, like when you've posted these videos all the time. It doesn't just have to be during your inner harvest, but you know, during that time you can enjoy doing something maybe you enjoy a lot more. Like maybe it's showing homes or doing open houses or, you know, whatever that is, like you can prioritize in that season because your videos are done. They're ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So have you put this into practice then on top of this with your cycle? Like going through the cycle syncing process?
I wish that I have, but you know, I'm currently like figuring out how that works with my cycle. So I will admit, I was like, sometimes I feel really good at certain parts of my cycle that maybe aren't, you know, the inner winter or something. So, you know, I have to think about that for sure. It's something I do want to try because I wonder, I do really trust my energy day to day. I don't look at it from I should feel this way, but I think more on like an activity basis. I definitely do put this into practice with my cycle because, you know, like around the ovulation time, like you can lift those heavy weights, you can really get into that workout. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, this is so heavy. Like, why is this heavy? I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm in a new phase now. So I need to just respect what my body is asking. And so I think for that, like intuitively, it totally has. But in terms of work output, I still haven't done that syncing because I work when the inspiration's there, which actually should track and see if it does align with my cycle. But if you try it, let me know.
Yeah, I will for sure. I think I'm very similar to you that I definitely love eating warm foods while I'm in my menstruation phase. And then, you know, I don't work out very hard right before, so I don't exasperate the PMS part of the end of the luteal phase. But you're right, around the ovulatory phase, I'm like, all right, I can digest caffeine better. I can eat more raw food. I can go out and socialize. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, wow, those best 5 days per month. And you're like, that's great. I'm on top of the world.
It's so micro. And I give all you women props out there who are getting to know their cycle alongside all the other things like seasons. This is so cool. I really, really love this. So how have some of your coaching clients found this? Have you received any feedback yet? How did your workshop go the other day?
Yeah, so my workshop was amazing. I ran it 2 times. So I had it in mid-March and then I did it again in early April because it was just like, everyone was like, wow, this was so helpful. And I was like, I feel good and I want to do this again. And I had a whole new group of folks join up and sign up for the one that we just had. And they were like astonished. I had people in 5 different countries join. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild. So like I was testing this with people outside of American values, like, and hearing this, you know, perspective. But I've been testing this in the background with my clients for a while. And so one of my clients particularly travels the world all the time. And she is an earth oracle. She's amazing. She does so many cool things, but she also travels a lot for fun and for her profession. And she said that this specifically, understanding this has helped her plan for upcoming travel, to understand when she really needs to go into her own, you know, her own space and be in her own world versus like traveling the world, you know, being exposed to all these different people. And I also have a client who is a professional flower grower, but also a florist. And last year we were working through understanding her own seasons because she has a farm and in the middle of summer is also her winter. And that's a really hard place to be as a professional florist. So what she does for wedding floristry, she only takes weddings in early spring and early fall. So she's not working in July on this crazy wedding. We've also joked that like she's going to maybe not grow certain flowers in the summer for sale, maybe just for her personal benefit. Because can you imagine being in your own personal winter and then in the heat of July out there harvesting flowers all day? She's like, I want to be spending time with my family. I want to be, on the beach or whatever. And so, she's really taken this and thought, how can I make those little tweaks to allow myself to actually feel good in those times? But most importantly, she doesn't feel guilty about how she feels midsummer being a flower grower and a wedding florist, and allows herself to know that it's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, this is the way my life is designed. And to also know that if she feels really good in January just because she's a flower grower and she should be taking off, doesn't mean she has to take off. She can be doing classes and workshops and things like that she feels really good to continue her learning. So for her, especially with such a seasonal profession, I've seen the most change. But a lot of my clients use this on a project basis to see, okay, launching this new thing. How am I moving through these phases? And then working backwards through them to understand what's the first place to start? Where do I go from there? And that's another thing I just love to help people do.
That is so cool. And so you're kind of getting this from when you look at the astrological chart, like where your placements are, like your planet placements. And like, I'm assuming the winter time for every person has the least amount of placements.
Not always. So you'd be surprised. It's not a straight, like, this is the thing, because everyone's chart, the things I look at the most are definitely your rising sign. And then I look at where your moon is. I look at where your sun is. The moon has not really as much of a play to this. Obviously, that's your inner world, and it's very important. I think the moon's a great sign we should really look at. But I'm looking at the rising sign, I'm looking at the sun sign, because the sun is where you get your marching orders every year. When your solar return happens, you get those marching orders. And so it's very rare that your sun sign will be in your winter. It's very rare. Unless for some reason every other planet for you is opposite your sun, then perhaps that will happen. But I usually find that spring, summer is where your sun is. For you, it's right in the early fall, but your sun is at like 1 degree of Gemini. So it's a little unique. You're at that early part of the sun. And then the rising sign can tell us so much, because that's where you get a burst of energy in the year. And I've seen rising signs where the ascendant is actually be in someone's winter, but you will get a little burst of energy depending on that. Like when the sun passes that part where it was on the eastern horizon when you were born. But I look at the chart ruler, I look at concentrations of planets. So like for us, people who are born around our time have like a big concentration of planets in Capricorn. And so that's a unique aspect. We were all, wherever we were before this, we were all like, who's some cool people who want some big energy together? And we're just like, we do. And we like slid in and forgot.
Oh my God. I am totally like picturing our souls like getting ready to come here and be like, we all need 3 Capricorn placements. For the listeners, so they can understand, do you know the years people were born and what Capricorn placements we have?
Yeah, so I think it's between like some parts of 1988, but mainly 1989 through 1991. I don't hold me to that, but it's around that time where we have Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune conjunct in Capricorn, which is like crazy. And then
what does that mean, Nicole? I mean, that is wild.
It's a lot. There's a lot of lessons to be held there. Saturn's happy in Capricorn, so it's like a good place to have Saturn, but to have, for me, they're all within like 1 to 2 degrees of each other. So they're like on top of each other. They'll vary depending on when you were born in that time period. But then for me personally, they also just add Venus into that, which I think is hilarious. Talk about like boss vibes, but like confusing in love. You know what I mean? I'm like, I want a solid professional guy. But it's like such an interesting thing to put all those planets together. And then interesting, like a lot of us, actually, I wonder if you have it. A lot of us have Jupiter opposite those exact signs. Yeah. So yours is close. Yeah. So Jupiter's a planet of expansion in opposition to Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, which are all outer planets, by the way. So they take a long time to move around the wheel. So our whole generation is experiencing this opposition between the planet of expansion and then the planet of lessons, the planet of, sudden shocks and changes, and then also the planet of dreamy, not really having a good catch on reality. So the 3 things, and I'm probably doing Neptune a disservice by calling it that, but that's just like first top of mind.
Yeah. And what's the archetype of Capricorn again? Like, how would you describe that?
Capricorn archetype is like the boss, the goat, climbing the mountain, the builder, always building, just a really solid, rock solid sign. We had Pluto in Capricorn for so long. and it just left this sign into Aquarius, which is so much more altruistic and for the people. If you think of anything like Capricorn feels like financial systems and like corporate hierarchy. Not always, it's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, because Capricorn energy is important. We build important things with Capricorn, but just think about goat climbing a mountain, like without any regard, like, oh, I'm just gonna keep going. That's Capricorn. Like Benjamin Button type too, like starts old, gets young, like that's Capricorn.
I love it. Shout out to all our early 90s, late 80s babies.
Yeah, you picked this chart for a reason, and we didn't touch on this, but I really believe, as crazy as it may make me sound, maybe not to ordinary magic listeners, but I believe we chose this chart for an exact reason. Like when we decide to incarnate, it's because of these placements. It's a portrait of the stars when we were born. We took our first breath. We knew exactly what we were doing when we came here. I mean, we could even go as far as to say we chose our parents, we chose our situation. And I know that is a very touchy subject when you think of like the lives people have lived, that we chose this for the lessons and the karma that we need in this life. And I'm not saying we don't have divine free will, because we totally do. And I think that's where we need to remember to lean into the fact that we are in choice and we can make changes. We can be self-authoring, but also we're working with like the decks stacked for us, not against us. So seasons help us see this. Astrology, human design. It's so important to look at it from that view, not the like dogmatic, scary view.
Yes. And that's what I really want everyone to learn, is that when you tap into that inner compass, so whatever tool you use, it doesn't really matter. The seasons, human design, astrology, numerology, like all the things, it's just to help you have more flow and accept really who you are, like who your soul came into this being to express yourself in this world, which is so cool. And I actually just heard this medium. She explained, like, because like you said, I know people get upset. They're like, I would never choose this thing that happened to me, you know? And she was like, if you've gone through a lot, like you're most likely an old soul. Like you were up there going, ooh, this time around, I want to choose whatever like the tragic thing is, because your soul like wants to experience all these human experiences. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's what we believe, and listeners, you can take it or leave it however you want. But I truly do believe that we choose our astrology, our human design. I was actually just looking at the synastry of Mia, my daughter's chart, and mine and her dad's. And like the connection between them is just, you can't make that up. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful, some of the channels that come together on their charts.
That's incredible. Yeah. And like you said, like the combinations, like we might not know why our soul chose it just yet, because many of us are probably just like entering this place of autonomy in our lives of like, okay, we've done all the things we were supposed to do, that we should, that we were told to do, go to school, go to college, you know, get a job, you know, get married, have kids, whatever. Or maybe we're in the middle of that journey and it's like, now what? You know, you can kind of do a lot of different things when you reach this like beautiful age, like after 30. I mean, you could totally do it sooner, but if you were born with Pluto in Scorpio, you're probably just now reaching that place of autonomy and figuring out like, this is the world that we chose to come into for a reason, and we can have so much fun.
Yeah, I love that message. And I just had a beautiful astrologer do a reading for me, and I didn't realize this. So this is just an example. My Saturn is in a hard aspect to my Venus, and I don't even know why it means this, but she said like a lot of things, because of where my Saturn is delayed until after my Saturn return, which is that, you know, around 30 years old. And it really took so much shame out of being delayed and making tons of money, or quote, being successful, or, you know, like all the things. Like I was like, huh, so my soul chose that. That's cool. Like now I get to just live. Great.
Yeah, we get to live, we get to find the good in stuff and find the good in life, but also like just another reframe for that perspective is like, what is success, right? Like, what does that mean? Like the other day I had this emotional moment in my garden and I was like, wow, like this is success. This is abundance. Like, this is amazing. It's not the success we've heard on paper. Now, back to that early 90s, you know, generation of all of those planets in Capricorn, you can see how a lot of us would think that our success relies on this paper of like what we've done and what we've accomplished and all of these things with all of these planets conjunct there. But reality is like, maybe it's way beyond that. And this moment that you had today made your whole day successful. Like anything can be success. It's just kind of like, well, how are we defining everything we look at. And like realizing that we are the author of our lives. If we're in choice, then we have the ability to pick up the pen and start writing a new story. But why do all the stories we've told ourselves up until this point make so much sense? And whether you, like you said, whether you use astrology, whether you use human design, Gene Keys, numerology, any of it, to understand yourself more and to understand why those stories make sense is the key to then choosing that new story and then seeing how it fits, trying it on for size. And like, I love that you've had that moment with your astrologer to be like, oh, it is okay. I can live this life now and just not worry and not tell myself a story that's not actually true.
Yeah. Oh, so beautiful, Nicole. Thank you so much for sharing all of your projector wisdom today. It was absolutely wonderful. Lastly, what are you excited about right now in your own personal life?
Yeah, I mean, my personal life feels so alive right now. You know, not only is it a great garden season, it always is a great garden season, but I feel like I finally hit a stride with expressing myself and not hiding who I truly am. And it feels really good to share it with so many different people in my life currently, people who I don't know, just having a fun time, not hiding.
I love that. And where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at NicoleDoyle.co. And that's my same as my website, NicoleDoyle.co. But yeah, I'm around. And I also am the host of the Soul Bloom podcast, which I hope to have Dayna on very soon. And you can find that wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yes, I love it. All right. Take care, Nicole.
Thanks, Dayna.
Ordinary Magic is a Lit Path Studios production, produced by Jamie Gale and Dayna Faye. Music is by Shane Ivers. Until next time, I wish you many powerful moments of ordinary magic.